complete match off of Method EU. With Perplexed and the addition of Wolf Disco this season, they've looked really strong. If they can just make sure that they are super consistent through all of their runs. We saw them in Waycrest Manor yesterday. Their Waycrest Manor, while they lost to Deplete from Beyond, it was still a sick run. And I believe that they are more than capable of taking a series off of Method EU. And it has to be here and it has to be now if they are going to ever push up from that number 2 spot to that number 1 spot.
Absolutely. Well, the dungeon is about to start here on Waycrest Manor. It is Method EU versus Perplexed.
Don't you dare call me daughter, witch.
All right, so both Method EU and Perplexed running up that left-hand side towards the Heartsbane Triad area as to not proc that Witch. The Witch will actually global combat you, so all of these guys will end up like trying to stay out of combat as much as they can with all the trash mobs. So making sure that they don't pull that Witch is fairly important.
Yeah, that's if you're on that right-hand corridor, then the Witch spawns, but if you go the left-hand way, it doesn't.
Yeah,
Both teams decided that one's not something they want to fight, which makes sense, because it filters into the pack late and everything, and that's really unfortunate for damage efficiency.
Perplexed got Sister Selena down to 36%.
36%? Excuse me? Look at Wolf Disco there, he's just popping off.
Yeah, Mira's on the side of Method EU also popping off. Method EU kind of got the trash pack grouped up a little bit quicker, so they were able to pull Heartsbane
Well,
Triad.
Method EU has pulled more trash here, so their damage numbers are higher, whereas Perplex is just hard focus these bosses. But actually, Method EU now pulling ahead in terms of their progression in the boss fight here. They have a little bit less damage on Sister Selena, but they've just been blowing everything up here.
Method EU also, it looks like they grabbed that garden, that captain patrol that was out in the courtyard, not in the courtyard, but in that hallway area that's right after Triad, and pulled them into the boss. That's fairly scary for your tank, I will admit. Plus the frontals that go out from that guard. What is it, like Soul Cleave or something?
Shadow Cleave, yeah.
Shadow Cleave,
that's a nasty
what it is.
one.
That could be fairly scary, especially in a triple melee comp like both of these teams are running.
Yeah, I mean, they have, ways to play around it if they're confident. It just adds so much extra stuff they have to do to the fight. They have to have somebody looking to gouge those Shadow Cleaves and interrupt the captain's defensives and stuff. But, their Method EU, they decided that they could do that pretty easily, and it looks like it worked out well for them, and now they've got a lot more mob count than Perplexed, and they've got a lot less trash to pull in the rest of the dungeon. Although I think Perplexed actually may have picked up some trash during this boss fight as well, because they were at 4% earlier, and they're now at 7%.
How are you feeling about the Rogue versus, we've seen Demon Hunter in here before. Brings magic damage buff for both of the Death Knights. Whereas I think the notable utility of the Rogue is the ability to be able to kill explosives, plus that Tricks of the Trade to be able to redirect threat towards the tank. Do you have a preference over either?
The Tricks is definitely going to help a little bit, stopping the Death Knights from getting... we've seen it happen in this tournament before, where those Death Knights just get auto-attacked because they've done 20 times as much damage as the Prot Warrior, and there's no way the Warrior's ever holding threat. Look at the snap coming out, though, from Method EU. They are snapping onto the fountain here.
Interesting.
And then,
Did they Tricks him with the
snap!
No
Look at that,
way, dude!
That's wild! So they
Okay. So for those who don't know, Gingy put Tricks of the Trade right on top of Now. Now gets in that snap spot. Gingy then walks up, tags Soulbound Goliath with that Tricks on him, teleports Now, and all of that trash that was sitting on top of the fountain, and snaps the whole entire pack onto it. Miras and Frag blow up that trash pack. Method EU is so far ahead now, and look at trash count differential. So Method EU is a solid 10% enemy forces count ahead of Perplexed, and while both of them are at 79% on the boss.
And they're going to pick up even more of these patrolling dogs that they missed the first time, bringing them into the fire along with the Soulbound Goliath. Look at that efficiency. They got the reset on the boss mechanic there, and they dragged the trash into the fire to have it take extra damage.
Not one bother given was about resetting Soulbound Goliath. That was the straight up.
Yeah, that was just for the dog damage.
Oh my goodness.
And now I bet we'll see them pull some more trash from the hallway as well here. Perplexed are cleaning up as well. They are going around with the Soulbound Goliath, pulling a bunch of trash. Looks like they got an unfortunate lightning strike there, though, onto the Soulbound Goliath. That can always happen where it just resets it when you were not planning.
Yeah, Zamak looked like he was getting prepared to get ready to pull a trash pack off to the side there, but that lightning strike right beneath that mob is going to kind of slow them down. Perplexed now does pull that double Thorn Shaper Thorn Guard pack.
Gingy now on a stealth mission. He popped his Vanish, I think, or a Lightfoot, and ran in, grabbed a bunch of mobs, and is coming back out now, bringing some extra enemies. And that's one of the things that Rogue brings for you as well. The ability to go with Tricks of the Trade and do that kind of stuff, and a huge suite of defensives as well. So even though he looks pretty low on the damage meters, he's providing all sorts of utility here. And he's handling all the explosives, so Fragments and Mirrors really don't have to worry about that at all.
Okay, Method U is playing this dungeon abnormally aggressive. I don't think we've seen a team play this dungeon this high octane before, where they're just slamming every single mob in a Soulbound Goliath. They're going to be at about 50% trash count after
Yeah,
this
they
boss.
have done 2 pulls this dungeon. They pulled onto the first boss, and then they pulled onto the second boss. Gingy about to go down, though, as that bleed really ramps up on him with the raging mob that applied it to him, but he's going to be saved by Xaylia there. Xaylia are looking a little bit low on mana, but I think they're going to be able to escape this boss fight and give him an opportunity to drink afterwards.
Next expansion, Rogues will have Shiv available to be able to dispel Enrage, but alas, not currently.
Yeah, that's good. That's what Rogues need. A little bit more utility, I feel like, is really what we've been requiring out of that class.
Yes. I 100% agree with Dratnus there. Xaylia is looking a bit parched, like you were saying. Gingy gets stunned by that Soul Thorns. Matthew does down Soulbound Goliath about the same time as Perplexed. But look at the enemy forces differential between these two teams. Perplexed is at 26%.
They are in the Huntsman's Lodge.
I like this pull by Perplexed.
Yeah, this is a large pull from Perplexed. It's going to get them a lot of count, but it's not onto any boss. What is now up to? I think now might be...
Oh
yeah,
my
this
goodness.
is...
Are they going into Raw?
Pull number 3 of the dungeon is going to be on to Rawl the Gluttonous. So 3 pulls, 3 bosses, and like 75% trash is what we're going to be seeing out of Method EU here. This is wild. Method EU have just advanced the game again here with their strategy. And look at the damage of those Death Knights as everything just evaporates.
So whenever you create like an MDT and you have somebody who doesn't like separate it up into pulls but instead clicks all of the pulls into
that's what Method E's done.
Yeah, that's what Method E's done. Literally 3 pulls, 3 bosses, and Dratnos was about right. Probably 75% of the trash count. I would suspect that they're going to pull the kitchen area as well to be able to get more than 75% trash count. Perplex is on to Rawl the Gluttonous as well, though, but it's taken 1 more pull to get here.
Yeah, Perplex decided to do a trash pull without fighting a boss at the same time. A little weird coming out of them there, but they are onto Rawl. A little bit higher on health on Rawl, but they're actually doing a pretty good job here of keeping pace with Method EU. Given how aggressive Method EU's pulling have been, you know, they're only 20% behind on the boss, and they have a little bit more enemy forces, although Method EU are going to pick that up when all this trash that they're about to pull onto the boss joins the fun.
Yeah,
You'll
so
see now, He runs over during the Tenderize cast of Rawl the Gluttonous because Rawl is not normally something you want your tank to walk away from, but while he's busy with that Tenderize, it is safe to do so.
I would still advise to not do that for all the lovely people at home. It's very dangerous, and if he casts his Consume All ability, then you're going to full wipe.
Yeah, that is not something you want to see. Method EU, though, getting further ahead on trash count as a result of this. They're keeping Rawl the Gluttonous about 20% lower than Perplexed, but yeah, Perplexed actually, this is still very much anyone's game here.
Okay, so something that Perplexed did yesterday in their match versus Deplete from Beyond is after Rawl the Gluttonous, they play double Obelisk together. So they play Urgroth Breaker of Heroes and I believe it's Samrak Beckoner of Chaos at the exact same time. That allows them to save some time and only play 2 Obelisks with the final boss. I think that made be like a big equalizer here. Depending on what Method U's strategy is for how they're going to play some of their obelisks.
Yeah, the boss is dying here. Let's see if anybody goes off in separate directions. Looks like they're going to finish off this witch here. I see Gingy sort of cheating towards that courtyard. Yeah, and he is going to run out towards the courtyard. So I think they may be doing double obelisk here as well, because Gingy is going to go and activate that one in the courtyard with Urgroth Breaker of Heroes. And here they're going to activate Samrak Beckoner of Chaos, and Method EU will be doing that double obelisk strategy as well. This is really efficient, right? It's kind of 2 obelisks for the price of 1, because you get to fight them at the same time, you get to cleave pretty efficiently, and you still get the benefit of now only having 2 obelisks with Goraktal, making that fight a lot easier.
I mean, Perplex was within 20 some odd seconds of Method EU there, with Rawl going down. Both teams also having 0 deaths here. Quite impressive, I will say. Samrak Beckoner Chaos and Urgroth Breaker of Heroes both melee incredibly hard. So while doing double obelisk here, it does save you a lot of time. Very scary for your tank, I will admit.
Yeah, the tank, especially when that Spirit Breaker cast is going around. Neither team has a Beast Mastery Hunter to pet taunt every Spirit Breaker, so they're just having to face tank those, and that is not an easy thing to do. Method EU not bothering getting out of that Dark Fury cast. They're just going to tell Xaylia to heal them.
Okay, so now Perplexed is running down into the bottom area of the manor, where it looks like Method U is still in that kitchen area. If they kill Urgroth here,
they're gonna have to
be
shroud.
in a worse position. They're going to be a worse position though, in like relative to the map than Perplexed is going to be. And
yes,
I
but
wonder
they're able to finish this quicker, right? So they're not doing, they're not inefficiently dragging a mob and trying to cleave it at the same time and like waiting for its cast, right? They're just killing it in one spot, and then they've got their Shroud and Lightfoot here, so they're doing this movement faster, and they did the pull faster, but they didn't get to do them at the same time.
Exactly. I think ultimately it's probably a little bit quicker to drag it, especially with like a triple melee comp. But
yeah,
how
when
much
you look
quicker?
Perplexed, I guess they've only killed one of their two enemies here. So yeah, Perplexed it's probably gonna keep the time gap about what it was before between the two teams.
Yeah,
Maybe
Method U has
time
pulled,
a little bit saved though by Perplexed.
Yeah, Method U has pulled Lord and Lady Waycrest. Now with all of the trash inside of inside of this room area, now you watch Mirrors and Fragrance's damage pop off as soon as all those mobs do get dragged out of those candles. Both of the DKs being very patient to make sure that all the mobs did get moved out of them. Otherwise, they would have wasted all of their damage. I think we've all been there, where we dump a lot of damage in the candles. Ooh,
yeah,
Mirrors dropped so low. Oh my goodness.
So does now as well. A lot of damage coming out on the side of Method EU.
Is that a 5 buff on that Rune Weaver, I think? Okay, so that Rune Weaver did go down while enraged, having a 5 buff. That was kind of scary.
You see Method EU pulling a little bit. I guess they're kind of losing some time here to Perplexed. Perplexed are kind of blasting damage on this pull. May have had a little bit less time spent inside those warding candles, as they are advancing to the same phase of the fight that Method EU are now. 30% separating the two Lord Waycrest health totals.
Oh my
This is going to be so close.
I can't say anything but just watch. It's like, it's so insane that... Okay, so now Method U is going to be spawning Lady Waycrest right here, where Perplexed, once they do get the get Lord Waycrest to 30% health, then Lady Waycrest will spawn herself. They're probably within, what, 15 to 20 seconds of one another?
Yeah, this is 15 seconds or so, I'd say, separating the two teams.
Yeah, we're gonna be able to see.
Wild, given like how is Perplexed able to keep up, given all of how much bigger Method E was pulling without anything going wrong? I don't understand.
All right, so yesterday, let me take a look at what Perplexed's time was. So yesterday, Perplexed had a 15:25 run in Waycrest Manor with 0 deaths, and they lost to Deplete from Beyond, who had a 15:21. Does this seems like it's going to be about on pace with that, right? The 15:20 range.
Yeah, I mean, 15 minutes even maybe. I guess it's a tyrannical Gorak toll with some trash, but
exactly with all the Gloom Horrors and with double
the
Obelisk.
Spider and the Blob. Yeah,
the Spider is notoriously annoying, especially to play with the Blob, because the Spider can get caught out into that that purple goop that Blob does drop, but having double DK, access to 2 ranged kicks is fairly nice. Perplex is going to be downing Lord Waycrest here momentarily. Method EU is already onto Gorak Tool. They Lightfoot Potion all the way in, pulling all of the Gloom Horrors in their path, pop Bloodlust, and now they are just nuking down all these mobs. It's really important to watch Now's health right here, as he is probably going to be the breaking point for something like this. In an enraging environment with all of these Gloom Horrors, it can be very scary as a prot warrior, so you need to make sure that he's looking pretty healthy. He's still sitting at 100% HP, and all those Gloom Horrors are already dead.
20 seconds later, Perplexed have pulled the same boss. They are popping their Bloodlust as well. They're going to need to do a lot more damage to catch up to Method EU, or something is going to have to go wrong on the side of Method EU. Neither of which is particularly typical of Method EU, but they have happened.
Yeah, so basically, once Gorak Tool dies for both sides, then the dungeon will end. There is no death differential here, bar some catastrophic failure. I don't suspect that anybody's going to die, so basically it's going to come down to just who ends up killing Gorak Tool first. And right now,
Perplexed
they're
have
within
5% behind. Yeah, they're focusing Gorak Tool, not even worrying about that Voidweaver Malthier at all.
At this point, you're screaming, please roll a 5 buff. Like, you're just
that could be the difference. Gingy doing... Wow, they're actually... Everybody's doing so much damage on both sides here. Those rogues and the tanks in just a completely another level, though, compared to those Death Knights. 2% now, 5%. 5% separating these two teams. Oh, looks like Method EU have the slight edge, but it is going to come down to the wire here.
It's going to be a race to the finish. The gap
4%.
is... yeah, 4%. Oh, my goodness.
3% separating these two teams. Perplexed. Second pots.
Okay, Fragnis and Mirrors both have just popped their cooldowns. They popped Blood of the Enemy as well. Gorak Tool should be going down here momentarily. Perplexed. Looks like they're going to be losing map 1.
14 minutes, 25 seconds. Method EU finish Waycrest Manor. And Perplexed, with the second best run we've ever seen of Waycrest, are going to lose to that.
Wow, that was extremely close at the end there, but Method U is going to take that first game over Perplexed. And Zyro, okay, Method U had some really big pulls in the beginning there, but Perplexed, like, kept up pretty well throughout that dungeon.
I mean, I think the impressive thing about this dungeon in general that we're seeing here is not only did both of these teams throw out pretty much near perfect runs, but they also did it in different ways. We saw different pull strategies around Rawl's Room. We even saw Method EU going for that bigger pull that we kind of just talked about potentially being a thing last week. Like, how can they make that roll pull even bigger? Well, let's just get some of the Hunter's Lodge in there too for fun, and they did that on Raw. This was just an incredibly impressive run from these two teams, and we still have potentially 2 more games in this series to go. It reminds me a lot of the Method and the Complexity series from last week. Like, if these two teams are playing at their best, it's going to be an absolute like bombshell of a series.
Yeah, Method EU, I mean, I don't think they killed a single trash mob outside of boss combat. I'm not sure, but I think they earned all 100 of their percent while fighting bosses.
They killed 2 Awakened mobs.
All right, 2 Awakened mobs. All right. Fine. You got me.
But still, like, Method EU really made it look easy. Tattles, how difficult of a strategy is that to pull off? I mean, it's Method EU. They were implementing it flawlessly, but talk about how that's, like, super hard to pull off.
Okay, so whenever we were watching Ethical last weekend, they pulled the whole entire courtyard into Soulbound Goliath, except for that corner pack. Method EU did the logical conclusion and pulled the whole entire courtyard, including that corner pack, into Soulbound Goliath, but they did it in a way that we've never seen before with that snapping strategy, allowing all of those mobs that now had on top of him to be grouped up perfectly on top of Soulbound Goliath. And I think that would be just the differentiator, because it allows you to just have everything stacked so quickly. I think that that's going to be an innovative strategy that we're going to see far more frequently now that Method EU has debuted it.
And it's kind of unfortunate for Perplex. I mean, they had a really, really clean run. That had to have been, was that their fastest Waycrest or close to their fastest Waycrest? I think you were saying, Dratnos?
I mean, it's definitely faster than we've seen out of them before. Yeah, if they've had faster runs, they've been off camera when they were practicing, and it's tough to imagine it being much faster than that. Everything went perfectly for them. Their damage looked so good. Like, I mean, they were 7 seconds slower than Method EU's run with like an extra pull in there. So I don't know how it happened, but they were on pace to make up that gap.
Definitely going to be a difficult turnaround for Perplexed here if they want to tie it out right now. This is best of 3. They're going to be moving on to Motherlode. Zyro, if you're Perplexed right now, where can they even see any room to take the edge over Method EU given that last game?
It's tough to say. We've seen Method EU's run. We saw them play against Paint for Femme yesterday, as a matter of fact, losing that Motherlode to Paint for Femme. So Method EU's definitely had an opportunity to look at a strategy that's better than theirs and potentially take some strategies from that, which is something that Method EU is particularly good at doing. We haven't seen it yet from Perplexed this week, but I mean, looking at the way these teams are playing, I'm sure they've got something good figured out here. Now, because it is bolstering Motherlode, we're going to see very particular polls coming out just to make sure that the teams are playing around those siege units in the first section of the dungeon. Can't remember what they're called off the top of my head right now, but you guys know what I'm talking about. They have to really make sure that they're not bolstering those up too much. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot that can go wrong. It's just about the bolstering, pretty much.
Yeah, those mechanized peacekeepers. We saw the really cool strategy from Paint for Femme involving, bringing them all to that first boss at once. I'm not sure if Method EU have decided or had the time to implement that into their strategy. But this is a dungeon where they have lost with a clean run. So that's good news for Perplexed, because that is what they were trying to pull off in Waycrest, right?
Yeah, well, we'll see if Perplexed can pull off a tie up against Method EU. Up 1 game already. The fixes are Tyrannical, Bolstering, and Grievous. 1-0 Method EU versus Perplexed.
You're seeing not very diverse compositions here. Triple Hunter coming out for both teams due to that bolstering affix.
Yeah, we actually saw Paint for Femme beat Method EU with the Rogue on their team, right?
Exactly. But Paint for Femme's, like, how they were pulling around the dungeon was very particular in, to having that Rogue as well, though. So it makes a lot of sense that since it is that bolstering environment that we are seeing both teams running triple hunter, I think that's going to be fairly common for the rest of the season, is that anytime you see bolstering, it's going to be favored for triple hunter, I suspect.
Yeah, especially bolstering, Tyrannical. That's really, I think, going to be a signal that hunters are going to be really strong in that dungeon.
That's definitely the wheelhouse. Perplexed and Method, you do very similar pulls at the very beginning. You do see those Peacekeepers getting pretty high. Divine starts dropping.
Yeah, he had a second
low.
of poison from a hired assassin on him. That's usually something you want to interrupt if possible, but they are able to survive that. 15% enemy forces going to be earned by Perplexed on their first pull. Meanwhile, on the side of Method EU, we're seeing also 15% with, I believe, the same combination of enemies.
Slightly slower, though. So I wonder if Perplexed is going to pull that VMZ area that we saw from Method EU, which kind of puzzled you and Jack yesterday on the cast, right?
We are easily puzzled, though, to be fair.
Yes, I also am easily puzzled. I fall right in line with that. Perplexed and Method EU, I feel like I'm having deja vu and I'm watching the exact same matches. They pulled the same packs again.
Yeah, it seems like an extra Peacekeeper, though, maybe coming in on the side of Method EU. I think that's 4 that they're fighting, to 3 on the side of Perplexed, so slightly bigger pull. But yeah, as you mentioned, Method EU finished their first pull a little bit slower than Perplexed, so Perplexed may be opening up an advantage, and that kind of makes sense with what we saw from them in Waycrest, right? Where they were opening up a slight lead from doing maybe slightly higher damage over the course of the dungeon.
Okay, so as a point of reference for those at home, so say the hired assassin is like the normal mob in this dungeon. The addled thug has 50% more health than the hired assassin. The peacekeeper has 200% more health than that.
And those off-duty laborers have like a third of the health, or half the health.
Exactly,
yeah.
And it's really difficult to do what Method EU just did, since they had assassins, thugs, and peacekeepers all in the same pack, yet the whole entire pack dies within seconds of one another. They make their way into the coin-operated crowd pummeler's room, where Perplexed here is still fighting off some more peacekeepers. So they're electing to get more of their count in that first area, a more typical strategy than what we've seen, where Method EU is skipping a lot more of the trash that's in the front area and waiting for that RP to kind of time out, and in the meantime they're going to be pulling some of those Earthshaper mobs.
Yeah, so we've seen Method EU do this before, where their plan is going to be to get almost all of their count from that final quarter of the dungeon, the VMZ, which is something that we hadn't seen before this this weekend.
Yeah, Perplexed has now pulled coin-operated crowd pummeler, sitting at 45% enemy forces count. Method EU will be finishing up their pull momentarily, probably going to be sitting around the 50% enemy forces count range, and at that point they will be able to pull straight into coin-operated crowd pummeler as the RP on that mob has probably finished.
Yeah, that is not the longest RP in the world. It's no Alliance Siege of Borealis.
Yeah, that one notoriously long, though. Okay, so Perplex is now down to 75% on coin-operated crowd pummeler, while Method EU has just recently pulled it. Again, 5% trash count differentiates these two teams, and we know for a fact Method EU's strategy will be pulling more mobs in the VMZ. I wonder where Perplex is going to get their count from.
Yeah, Perplexed has slightly less count than Method EU here, but they still have that trash in front of operated crowd pummeler, like on the other side, available to pull. So they'll presumably be a little bit ahead in count after that. It'll be interesting, though, to see where they choose to pick up the rest of their count. They could also backtrack, but I think that is not likely to be something that they are planning to do. It's something we've seen teams do sometimes, where they'll backtrack and get up to like 70% count from the first area. A shine goes down.
Going down. I didn't see what it was to. Maybe it's to that charged claw. It looks like he's really far off to the right side over there. But yeah, so they're going to elect to not battle res him. Of course, once you do kill a coin-operated crowd pummeler, you do unlock a checkpoint right here. Perplex is kind of ascended on this boss, killing it significantly quicker than Method EU, even though Method EU pulled it 25% behind.
Yeah, even with the death here, this is going to be time neutral at worst for Perplexed. Interestingly, their hunters are all playing dwarves, whereas Method EUs are all playing night elves.
What does it
Not
mean?
sure. So dwarf has some pretty cool utility in this dungeon in particular. On Rixa Fluxflame, you can stone form off the chemical burn. Although you can also shadow meld while it's being cast at you, but that requires a much faster reaction time.
So hear me out. Azarok Bleed.
Yeah, Azarok Bleed can be stone formed as well.
Exactly. So the hunters could stack in melee whenever Azarok's ads are fixated onto them, and just utilize that Beast Cleave and those hunter pets to be able to blow up those ads, and then they just stone form off that that dot that is on them. Fragments played Dwarf on this dungeon whenever we saw it yesterday.
Yeah, we saw the debut of Frag McLovin.
Yeah, Frag McLovin, but now he is on that Night Elf, which I think ultimately doesn't make that much of a difference. Like, sure, there would be some minor change in terms of like being able to dispel the dot on Rixa, like you were saying, but I think the full dwarf team makes a lot more sense on the side of Perplexed.
Yeah, we'll have to see if they choose to find a way to incorporate that racial into their strategies. We see, again, the teams differentiating a little bit here. Ooh. Perplexed pulling some trash, while Method EU are going straight into Azerok. 50% trash count. We know they'll be getting almost all the rest of theirs from the final quarter of the dungeon.
Okay, so here we go. Perplexed here. Something you can do with the extractors is those drillers don't give count whenever they come out of the extractor. So Perplexed there, they kill those double extractor, get both of those drillers, and then group meld / feign death off those two drillers to not be inefficient with their pulling. But notably, they are doing Voidweaver Malthier, where Method EU has elected to skip Voidweaver Malthier.
Yeah, we saw Method EU do this last time, where they were able to safely do Mogul Razdunk with the Voidweaver active. They did it with 3 obelisks, which is a lot for a Tyrannical Mogul Razdunk. That is a tricky encounter. Perplexed gonna be probably doing 1 or 2 obelisks with last boss, depending on what they decide to do in the rest of the dungeon.
So they are at least doing 1 currently. I suspect that they will go through this R&D wing and grab the Blood of the Corruptor out of there and play him into that Rixa Fluxflame area, because playing him with Mogul Razdunk is notoriously hard.
Yeah, and then most teams will do the Fear guy as well on the obelisk rather than on the boss. That's the one that Method EU is even going to choose to not fight with the boss.
Look at this. Okay, Perplexed, like I was saying, they stand all the way in melee to be able to get all their targets that are fixated onto them, and then they, like, if they were to get melee, they are able to dwarf racial off that. A Shine, you see his dwarf racial is on cooldown, so presumably he got a stack and then was able to cleanse that off of him. Method EU has pulled is also on Azerok. They're going to be downing it here shortly. The difference in time is probably coming into that Voidweaver Malthier obelisk played by Perplexed versus Method EU, but Perplexed is ahead 18% on trash count.
Yeah, that was actually really cool what Perplexed did. So they grouped up and they stacked those ads, and then they used Binding Shot, and then they got out of range, and then they used their Stone Form on anybody who got a stack of that bleed.
I like that.
Yeah, it was really cool strategy coming out from Perplexed that I think allowed them to very efficiently cleave those things down. On the other hand, it doesn't really matter if they're being chased, given they're Beast Mastery Hunters, so they could have maybe also just ignored them and done boss damage instead.
So, Method EU yesterday played 3 Awakened mobs with the final boss, right? The only mob that they didn't play was that Samrek one, which is the mob that is the right after Rixa, correct?
Yeah, we just saw them meld past where they could have used the Blood of the Corruptor as an Awakened skip instead, but they've decided we can just do Blood of the Corruptor with Mogul Razdunk as long as it dies fairly quickly. It's not too much of a problem.
Yeah. Perplexed here is going to be downing Azerok here momentarily, still making sure that they stay stacked up for those Earth Rager kites. They have pulled some trash into it. It looks like they pulled that Taskmaster Ascari pack into it, which does that shield. But Azerok notably has a pretty large hitbox, and it's hard to... Or like
bolstered Azerok there.
Yeah, okay, so he's starting to get bolstered, but he's at 2%, so it's not going to be too bad. Ascari is down sub 10.
Yeah, we actually saw Paint for Femme do a pretty cool thing where they pulled that in, and they just didn't focus Ascari himself at all, and then they melded him off at 70% health when the boss fight was done. All right, so Perplexed, going to be pulling on the right-hand side here of the Research and Development wing. This is what we saw out of Paint for Femme, this pull.
Yeah. So do you suspect that they're going to play the Blood of the Corruptor obelisk?
Yes. It seems likely that they're going to do that. It's definitely not guaranteed, but I think that they're probably going to choose to fight that thing.
Yeah. Method U here on Rixa Fluxflame. It looks like they have pulled that War Machine with the Specialists. The Specialists are the ones that do that big orange area of effect thing that you saw drop out of the sky. If you get touched by that, you're probably going to die fairly quickly. But doing a really good job of having efficient cleave with that War Machine into the bottom 10% of Rixa Fluxflame.
Those orange swirlies will get you as well, because they fire off much more quickly than the ones that are just part of the environment in the last area, and so you can just get tricked into thinking it's safe to stand in there for a sec.
Yeah, now is actually probably pretty scared by having that War Machine and this charge shot into Rixa, which does magic damage melees. That like versus a Protection Warrior seems fairly scary.
All right, I was mistaken on Perplexed side. Yeah, they are not going to be playing the Blood of the Corruptor until they get to Mogul Razdunk. That's going to be good. That's going to speed up their route, actually.
Look at the difference in trash count. So there's about a 30% trash count differential between these two teams. We know Method EU is going through the route that's less traveled in the VMZ area here.
Yeah, they're going to be doing 2 big trash pulls in here, whereas Perplexed are probably going to pull a little bit of trash onto Rixa, and then they'll have 1 medium-sized pull after the boss. And that'll be all they need. They may not even be pulling any trash into Rixa itself.
Who do you think is ahead right here?
Slightly ahead. I think that on a Tyrannical, with Tyrannical as that active affix, I think that you'd rather have a large trash pull than a boss.
They still have to play the Obelisk though.
Yeah, so does Perplexed, presumably.
Or Perplexed plays Samrek with Mogul Razdunk.
Samrek with Mogul Razdunk is particularly scary though, because there are a lot of spots you can get feared into something bad. I mean, maybe.
Method EU just made a minor mistake there. They accidentally bolstered some of those Sky Scorchers, so they had to group meld them off to be able to reset those bolstering stacks onto them before resuming play.
Yeah, that's going to cost them maybe 15-20 seconds, and that use of Shadow Meld, which means they won't be able to avoid mechanics with it for the next 2 minutes. I don't think they actually had any meld skips here. But yeah, okay, so they actually have a couple more pulls to do here. I was mistaken on the number of pulls. They have this pull, and then they have 1 more pull to do after this. So 2 total pulls left in the dungeon, plus the Obelisk, and then the last boss for Method EU. Perplexed finishing off Rixa Flux Flame, and they probably have 1 or 2 pulls, and then the Obelisk, and then the last boss as well.
Well, it comes down to if Perplexed wants to play
goes down
Samrek.
On the side of Method EU. And he's going to have to be running back here.
Bad.
That's not good. It's not the end of the world, though. It looks like everybody's able to stay fairly healthy.
How is Now's health bar not moving while not having a healer? Yet, whenever I go into LFG, my tank needs healing constantly.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what Now has done to not ever take any damage. I think that it might have to do with that shield that he's holding and just keeping it up at all times.
Yes, the blocking ability. I see. Perplexed has actually pulled double War Machine on top of one another. These War Machines interact kind of interestingly with one another. If one of them is channeling a charged shot onto you...
Oh yeah, we're going to see it right now.
Yeah, the charged shot will go on the nearest melee DPS and not go onto the tank instead. Kind of a weird interaction, but Perplexed does a good job of trying to make sure that those are not...
Yeah, you have to desynchronize them, because if they're both casting at the same time, then it will do some nasty things to somebody else in your group. Method EU on their final pull of the dungeon. Perplexed, 97% count. They need to go activate this Obelisk, unless maybe they're just going to meld.
Maybe count.
Yeah, maybe they're just melding. What are they up to here? It looks like they might be having a little think about what to do next. That's not something you really want to be doing. Maybe they're waiting for cooldowns.
They're opening up the Dratinus Expert route.
Yeah, opening up the MDT. Looks like they're going to be fighting one Sky. Okay, no, they're doing a big meld. Yes, they're going to run to boss, and they're going to fight Samrek with the last boss. Method EU also getting onto the last boss, and once again we are going to see these two teams neck and neck as they will engage this last boss right around the same time.
Did I miss it, or did Method EU not play Samrek?
I think they did not either. Yeah, so Method EU are playing 4 obelisks. They saw when they lost.
Zalia's getting all the mobs, man. He's gonna kite them like I was talking about yesterday.
Yes, they are doing it. They're kiting. They're kiting Awakened on this. I said that they were gonna maybe do this last time, and now they're actually doing it this time. I wonder if they. So at some point they may have made an audible to not do it yesterday, but this time they are doing it. So they've cleared out the whole VMZ, and that means that Zalia can now kite all these mobs. Does have to be careful to not activate any mines, as that would maybe cause him a little bit. Oh, okay.
No, activating a mine is absolutely okay. He's gonna be pretty far away from them. He needs to make sure that he is getting far enough out. From these mobs, because if any of them get too close to him, or say he gets corruption slowed or whatever, he could go down pretty quickly. This is so scary. That Blood of the Corruptor's right on his tail.
Yeah, he can't get too. He has to run in a little zigzag pattern though to make sure that the Urgroth stays caught up with the others, because Urgroth sits and casts that Dark Fury for so long, and if the mobs are too far away from each other, then you're going to be too far away from that back one, and it's going to snap to you and kill you.
Is that how it works? Can you get too far away and it snaps to you?
Yeah.
So
that's why you'll see them always kind of doing a little bit of a zigzag to keep Urgroth close to the others. And you'll see Zalia now yeeting around there, uses Transcendence, and is now running back towards where the boss fight is. Mogul Razdunk at 50% from Method EU as they are just dealing with the boss, and they've dealt with the intermission now, it looks like. They'll be bringing Mogul Razdunk down. Perplexed do have a healer available here. Method EU is like, you know what? We do not need that healer. Although, unfortunately, it looks like a cast went off on Miraz there from the spider. think the spider snapped back to the rest of the team.
That is not what
That
you
is not
hope
good.
for.
Miraz is now going to be dying as a result of that 4-stack
Miraz is
of
gonna
Grievous.
die to Grievous, dude.
Yeah, there's no.
How are they doing this with Grievous?
Zalia's going to run back and maybe toss him a heal. Miraz is going to try to get an injection of heal. No, they're not going to need it. They've killed the boss. The boss is dead. It's over. Oh my goodness.
Did they kill the boss?
Or did it reset?
I think it reset. I think it may have picked Zalia to do the crash down on.
Well, that is not good for Method EU. That's very bad for Method EU. That's the opposite of what they wanted to happen there.
Hey, Drenos, you see those 4 pillars? I think they contain awakened mobs.
They do contain Awakened mobs still, and Method EU are going to have to try again here, and Perplexed are going to profit as a result of this. Oh my goodness.
Hey, Drenos, I think Perplex is at 49% and have a healer.
That is really good to have. Healer's one of those really useful things. Zalia, though, gonna try again. So they're gonna try the same kiting strategy of the 4 awakened enemies here. But it is gonna be too late for them as Perplexed are looking great. Unless Perplexed wipes to just the boss, having dealt with all of those awakened enemies, they are gonna achieve victory here. And this strategy, the unreliability of it really coming to bite Method EU here as they fail to execute this properly the first time. The spider somehow...
The spider is...
Yeah, so the spider somehow cast on Miraz. I'm not sure how it got back into the fight, or maybe it was still in range or something, and got a cast onto Miraz. And then when Zalia got too close to the boss arena, maybe trying to deliver a heal to Miraz, then it ended up causing him to get targeted by some boss mechanic, which caused the boss to then reset as he was out of the boss arena.
This is absolutely one of the scariest possible things because it is also Grievous. The fact that now is able to sustain himself with just spirit mins from those spirit beasts, and then like Zalia's died.
It's purely ridiculous, but Perplexed are going to take home the win here as they have killed their boss. They have reached their 100% trash count. It's going to be 17 minutes and 6 seconds for Perplexed to deal with the Motherlode, and the time in this dungeon is just getting breathtakingly fast.
What is this dungeon?
Yeah, that is going to tie up this series 1-1 in this Method EU versus Perplexed match. And man, that really just goes to show you what happens when you take those really risky strategies. And, you know, in the end there, it really just didn't pay off, Zyro.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like, how that's even possible in this Grievous affix, right? Because every single time one of those hunters gets hit by a rocket, they're going to start ticking down to Grievous.
Well, you can avoid the rockets because you can, if you feign death, the rocket will just explode.
You can feign them, and then I guess you can turtle if you get a second one. But then what do you do in the intermission when you get damage from all of the crash downs? Right? There's just so much damage going on. I guess you have Exil and Health Pot for 2 of them.
No, you also have Meld. That's why they're running triple Meld.
I guess you have Meld as well. It just seems like it's such a risky strategy, and then getting the boss reset on top of that. I mean, I feel like it's definitely something you can pull off on non-Grievous.
Yeah.
But
hunters also get they can play that duck and cover Azurite trait and get a huge amount of, so they can get that feign death shields.
It wouldn't surprise me if they have pulled this off in practice. You have to remember this is the team that 2 years ago did a 4 DPS no healer Grievous Neltharian's Lair as well. People tend to forget that happened too, but it still seems pretty ridiculous to pull off.
They are not playing duck and cover, but they are playing natural mending.
Well, they have a duck and cover on their helmet, right? At least Frag does.
Frag? Oh, okay. Yeah, never mind. Yes, I do.
But yeah, they I guess just defensive Azurite traits and use of those health potions and stuff was how it was supposed to look. And I think they would have all been fine except for somebody got a spider cast on them. So I think the spider somehow got threat back on one of them and snapped back to the boss fight, and that was what caused all the problems.
So Miraz is playing Resounding on his helmet. The other 2 hunters are playing that duck and cover.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Both are very useful for this, right? Either one can be extremely valuable.
Well,
yeah.
And we didn't see that strategy coming out for Method EU the first time that they played Motherlode against, I think, Paint for Femme yesterday. I mean, Perplexed, they got second place last EU Asia tournament, and if they hadn't have ran that strategy, could they have maybe beat them?
So Method EU's previous Motherlode without that strategy, which was clean and had 0 deaths, was 18 minutes or so. They lost to Paint for Femme's 17 minute and 49 second Motherlode. Perplexed just did it in like 17 minutes and a handful of seconds. So looks like no. They probably needed to speed up their route somehow.
But also in that Motherlode, they were just going faster than Perplexed in general. They could have gotten easily a sub 17-minute run if they just did it normally and they had their bloodlust available. They could have cleaved the awakened mobs down.
Well,
Maybe,
normally
I don't know.
for them they're playing Samrek, not with the final boss.
They had a lot more awakened mobs as well.
Exactly. Normally for them would mean that they had to play that fourth and final awakened obelisk, which would have put them behind Perplexed.
Yeah.
But now we get to see an incredibly exciting Freehold, which we've seen from both teams this week. Method EU did end up opting to go for the kiting strat in this dungeon earlier on this week in the very first matchup of the day yesterday. They had a 14:03 run. And Perplexed opted to not go for the kiting strategy that they
after inventing it. Yeah.
After inventing that strategy, they opted to go for the cannon barrage technique, which Tettles keeps mentioning should be better if you're able to pull it off, but their time was 8 seconds slower than Method EU, so these guys are just so close on this dungeon in their runs this weekend.
Well,
you want to know something? Hold on. Let me interject
What's
one
up?
second. Method EU's hunters were running the rebooting bit band, which allows them to heal 5 injured allies. So that's how they were doing it.
Do you think they'll run it again? Do you think they'll try that strategy again in a live tournament if we see them on Motherlode again, Method EU?
Yeah.
I would love to see them pull that off. I mean,
what's the internal cooldown of that heal?
15 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah. And it looks like, according to this, it's 13,000 to all 5 players.
Yeah, so they were just healed. That was providing thousands of HPS to the entire group there from each hunter.
Huh.
Wild.
What a wild strat.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive.
It's impressive for sure.
Well, we are going to be moving on to Freehold with Tyrannical, Raging, and Explosive. It is 1-1 in this Method EU. Perplexed series loser of this game will be jumping down to the lower bracket.
This has just been the most insane series so far, and we are now on to Freehold, which is the closest map that the two teams have in terms of times so far recorded. We have a 14:05 from Method EU and a 14:11 from Perplexed, so 6 seconds separating the previous times we've seen from these two teams.
So Perplexed pioneered the Kite the Obelisk strategy in the Freehold last EU Asia Cup. Method EU kited the obelisks in the last time that we saw them in Freehold. Now goes down!
Now goes down!
This is going to be probably...
Nope, they get him back up. He doesn't have that AoE taunt available, though, so they're going to have to kite here. I think they're going to be able to avoid... Yeah, Frag has all the threat here, of course. Oh my goodness, he gets slapped once. That plate armor, though, is going to save him, and eventually everything getting taunted back by now, but that is going to do horrific things to their timer here. That's going to cost them double digits of seconds, and Perplexed are now onto this first boss. With that battle res still available, they get their Bloodlust nice and on cooldown as well. Method EU going to be pulling this first boss maybe 30 seconds later than Perplexed. They do have 5% more enemy forces count, so that is a silver lining for them. But I believe that Perplexed has taken the lead early on here in this dungeon.
Yeah, ultimately, I think that 5% enemy forces count, like the great equalizer with that, is the fact that we know that Perplexed is going to Cannonball Barrage that final pack in the dungeon, and Method EU is going to kite those obelisks. So Method EU is going to be looking to pull a little bit bigger towards their middle part of this instance, where Perplexed is going to be looking to finish off those obelisk mobs and get that extra 10-ish% trash count from that middle pack.
Both teams, Method EU has actually done a pretty good job here of catching up on boss damage. They're now just 5% behind Perplexed on Skycap and Crag's health. They're missing 5 seconds because of that death, but they do have 5% more enemy forces count. But as you mentioned, comparing the teams based on enemy forces, we know that Method EU is going to need to get more before they can pull that last boss, as they're not getting count from Cannonball Barraging or even from the Awakened mobs themselves, and Perplexed is going to be getting all that count.
It kind of sucks too for Method EU that they completely wasted their bloodlust. They didn't waste their bloodlust. If they would have bloodlusted that first pack, they would have completely wasted it. But they fortunately enough saved it, is what I meant, for the boss damage. Where I believe Perplexed may have used it on that first pull.
Yeah, Perplexed Lust is definitely is 1 minute earlier on cooldown, so it may well have been, and that would explain how Method EU caught up on the boss earlier. Although Perplexed hitting a second wind here, hitting a second set of cooldowns, it looks like, as Skycap and Crag is going to be dying for them. Substantially ahead of where Method EU is.
Yeah, a Shine you actually do see has already run off to the side. He's going to be starting that RP in that Council of Captains area and in that Ring of Booty area to be able to get that pig pre-spawned. He's going to already have drank his debuff. You can see it right there next to his sated debuff. So those are two things that he's looking to do. It's a little bit of a time save over the course of the whole entire dungeon than being there for the last 15% of Sky Captain Crag than running around with your teammates.
All right, it's going to be a 20-second split difference between these two first boss splits from the two teams. So the teams, Perplexed opening up a slight lead with that now death on the side of Method EU. Looked like that might have been to the grenade from the crack shot there that got him earlier on in that very first pull. And that is an uncharacteristic mistake for Method EU when everything is on the line here. They really do not want to be sent to that lower bracket as well, because I believe that they've, like, if they do that, they're then going to be having to play back-to-back into the grand finals rather than getting a break and being able to just practice those grand finals maps, which are different than the maps in the lower bracket.
Look at Perplexed here doing a pretty sizable pull straight into Jolly and Raul. It kind of sucks that Buccaneer wasn't in all the way for Wolf Disco's cleave. Look at Wolf Disco just skyrocketing on the meters, eclipsing almost 2 million DPS as all those trash mobs die fairly quickly there.
Method of You gonna try and do the same thing here. Frag also popping off here, gets above 2 mil as well. Will we see 3 mil? We see 3 mil.
Oh, 3? Give me 4?
Not a bad number. I believe we are not gonna see 4 though.
5?
I think we've actually seen 6 before in MDI earlier, and slightly more favorable pulls for the Death Knight with slightly more mobs.
I mean, at some point, if your one Death Knight's going to hit 6 million DPS, you probably want just the second Death Knight so that your first Death Knight is not hitting 6 million DPS.
True.
Perplexed here.
Pulling some trash here into the boss. Yeah, so again, Method U still 5% ahead on trash count. They are going to be pulling this Crusher in with the boss. That's going to turn on Miraz's rapid reload trait, which is nice. I mean, and it's going to set up that pull in future to be... So part of the reason they have to pull this is that this is a mob that will otherwise stop Zalia's race car route later with the kiting of the awakened enemies. So they need to pull pretty much everything in this area of the dungeon so that Zalia can have a clear racetrack to run around in.
I think that's probably a big differentiator between the two teams, too. I mean, it is fairly... it's still going to be fairly even, and the Crusher with the bosses is not exactly time inefficient. But it is something that you have to pull that Perplexed is probably otherwise not looking...
Well, Perplexed may be just about to pull it right now that we say that.
I may have spoken too soon.
Yeah, they're just grabbing everything here. Or they might just... Yeah, they are grabbing everything. Oh, Zamak gets yoinked back by that harpoon. Does make it into the boss arena, though.
Lost the explosives. Okay. Everything's looking A-okay here. This is actually fairly scary in terms of explosives, so that's why everybody has to Lightfoot as quickly as they do, because if anybody gets trapped behind them, they're going to get blown up by explosives. That is a lot of orbs that spawn for the side of Perplexed, but Shine doing a really good job of being able to deal with those. Method EU has now finished off their boss as well. Now they are making their way into that area where Ludwig von Tortollen here will be spawning momentarily.
Yes, signing up for one of these MDI teams as a rogue, you know, there's all these promises of having all these fun pulls, and it turns out your job is pretty much just hitting explosive orbs.
Yeah, you just bring out the gun and you fire it at the explosives over and over again. Ludwig von Tortollen is really low on the side of Perplex, where Method EU, he's almost 100% HP.
Yeah, Method EU certainly behind in terms of where they are in the dungeon, but they may be able to kill Harlan Sweet much faster than Perplexed as a result of their strategy of kiting those awakened enemies that Perplexed will not be doing. So that'll be something that we may see them accelerate towards the end of the dungeon by using.
Something interesting that I just noticed as well is that both of the Mistweaver monks from the side, from both of these teams, are running that Forbidden Obsidian Claw, presumably for the mana return. It also does decent damage, and then both of the tanks are also running that, Obsidian Claw, but they're both running Merecthus Fang for a maximum amount of DPS to be able to output.
Yeah, Merecthus Fang, great combination with that Strength of the Warden Major, as you can cast the Merecthus Fang and then use Strength of the Warden to amplify its damage, as it is a dot.
Oh, they are both running Strength of the Warden. That's a good call, Aldratnus.
Yeah, it's a massive damage source for these Prot Warriors, especially since they've moved away from that. Actually, they haven't even moved away from that Twilight Devastation, as now has a Twilight Devastation 3 on his gear, and I believe Divine does as well. No, Divine is playing no Twilight Devastation. Okay, so that is a difference between these two tank builds. Divine is on that pure versatility life.
And of course, you guys can check that out at mdi.gcd.tv. You can check it down in the description, or you can type it into your browser to be able to look at those as well. Perplexed at 35% lead on Trothak over Method EU here. starting to build that lead even more. Although Method U a little bit ahead in trash, but we know that that difference is going to be ultimately just coming down to kiting obelisks, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Method EU needs to get more trash now because they are not going to get any during that last boss fight. Whereas
Precisely.
Perplexed only need to get to like 80% because they will get all the remainder during that last boss encounter as they cannon the entire island over there plus the awakened enemies.
I don't think it's the entire island. I think it's most of
The entire island, Tunnels.
Cannonball Island. Okay, so now you actually see the boss is starting to equalize in health. Method U is starting to catch up a little bit.
Yeah, Method EU blasting down Trothak, pulling some trash onto it as well, although so has Perplexed. Perplexed advancing to 70% now as Method EU closing in on 80%. Trothak will be dying probably again about 20 or 30 seconds slower for Method EU than it does for Perplexed.
So I think
Tyrannical is still our active affix in here.
does Perplex need another trash pull in this area, or are they good to go, do you think?
I think they might be chilling.
So yeah,
might
there's
be time.
72%. So they're at 72% enemy forces count. Method U at 80%. I have a strong suspicion that Perplex is in the lead, even though we know that Method U is going to save some time by not kiting those obelisks.
I mean, just with our prior information, right? We know that the two teams were within
Correct.
6 seconds of each other on their, perfect runs, or not their perfect runs, but their previous runs, which both looked pretty good. And then Method EU has had a oopsie that cost more than 6 seconds. So by that count, Perplexed would seem to be ahead.
How do you feel about Frag doing tank damage currently?
That's a classic Unholy Death Knight phenomenon where sometimes you're the best damage by far, and sometimes you're not visible on the damage meters.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, you gotta pull out those binoculars and find the Death Knights when they don't have their cooldowns.
Yes, and on Trothak, notably, can't stand in melee because he doesn't have.
Ooh, yeah.
long
Also
arms.
gotta pull out the binoculars there to see Fragrance's remaining health. Does barely survive, but it was close to seeing another death on the board for Method EU. Perplexed are making their way to Harlan Sweet now, and they will be fighting Harlan Sweet and getting all of the remaining 28% count that they need to finish this dungeon.
So,
It's going to start off with awakened enemies, and then they're going to yeet right into that middle pack before Harlan phases below 60%. So they're going to only have one set of cannon barrages, but they don't care.
This is very scary. Ashan gets pretty low there, is able to recover. Zamak is now popping his way to the crane right here. Basically, you're going to see the team standing in that Dark Fury. Is Voidweaver Malthier snapped off to the side and free casting on the group?
Does kind of look like they just don't care about that for now.
No, I think Divine got hit by the Swiftwind Saber, and the Voidweaver Malthier may have snapped into that spot and is not snapping out.
Uh-oh.
Voidweaver Malthier, please come down.
That could do some very nasty things here to Perplex. Looks like they're going to go and try and maybe outrange it. Yeah, they're getting over here to the edge of the room, hoping that it'll snap
This is
back
bad.
at them. And Harlan Sweet resets on the side of Perplexed as a result of that brutal interaction we just saw there.
Bloodlust too.
Yep, Voidweaver Malthier caused that to happen by being... So, Divine got knocked by the Swiftwind Saber. It snapped Voidweaver Malthier onto that kind of midair spot where he was, and that just led to a full-blown disaster for Perplexed. They're going to have to pull this boss again, but now the ball is back in Method EU's court. If they can execute this kiting strategy on the Awakened mobs, then they will be able to win this series and continue in the upper bracket, despite Perplexed looking so good these past two dungeons. That
Dude.
one reset is going to cost them.
Perplexed lost a match to map to Method EU because the eel got dragged into the depths of I don't even know where and reset Volzith the Whisperer, and now Divine gets knocked into a random snap spot, snaps Voidweaver Malthier into it. The mob doesn't come down and it resets Harlan. This is a tragedy.
It's not out of the... They're not over yet, though, as Method EU still does have to execute this kiting strategy.
They're mostly... Okay, so basically, the only way that Perplexed would win is if Method EU... if Zalia does, in fact, go down. Perplexed still has a lot of count that they have to deal with by sitting at 83%. Obviously, they were going to Cannonball Barrage everything, but now with all of these Awakened mobs, it's taking a significantly longer period of time than they would like because they don't have Bloodlust available to them.
Yeah, this is really, really brutal. A Shine pops cheap death there. Rally comes out from Divine Field, but things are going poorly for Perplexed. Looks like they're going to be able to survive here, finish off these last 3 awakened enemies, but this is just taking so much time. Method EU way ahead now on Harlan Suite. They are at 100% enemy forces. They've gotten all the trash that they need. And Xaylia doing that kite there. As long as Xaylia doesn't die, that's the thing though. Xaylia could die in 1 auto attack, and then the mobs would all teleport back and wipe Method EU very rapidly thereafter.
Exactly. I mean, it really is a knife's edge there, and it can end at any given moment. This isn't like one of the strategies like normal Harlan Suite. Once you get them sub 30%, you're kind of home free. This is one of those things that even at up to the last moment, it's still, oh goodness, what's happening here?
Yeah, I wonder if they practice this by just like coming in here and having Xaylia kite for a couple hours and just keep doing the circuit and seeing if he could keep it, you know, without dying.
Put it on like
reliably.
a 10.
Yeah. 20% now in Harlan Suite. As he is in that double damage phase, he will be dying very rapidly on the side of Method EU. As long as Xaylia can live for a couple more seconds, this should be all they need to advance to the grand finals.
Whew, man, what a series this has been. And there, Method EU has taken it 2-1 over Perplexed.
Yep, that is going to send Perplexed down to the lower bracket. That is not the end of them. They will be fighting it out in the lower finals in that series. Their competitor is going to be coming from that Deplete from Beyond versus Self-Reliance series that we'll see pretty soon here. And Method EU has moved on to the grand finals. And